Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Alexandra from Alexandra Avenue, and in this video I want to show you how to sew this timeless dress. It's a simple digital pattern that enables you to create a chic and versatile dress that can be styled up and down, called the Classy Ava Dress. Just as a disclaimer, I'm not entirely happy with the white fabric I chose for this tutorial. It's a bit too thick and stiff for the pattern, so I would recommend going for a medium weight fabric, such as the ones that I chose for the blue and the pink dress. It's a classy short-fitted dress with a round neckline, gathered cap sleeves, and an invisible zipper at the back. It has princess seams on the bodice that are combined with darts on the skirt and a section seam at the waist. So let's dive right into it. First things first, make sure to take accurate measurements. The most important one is your bust measurement, since it's the one you will base your size on. The size chart is linked below. You will roughly need 1.2 to 1.8 meters of your main fabric, 30 centimeters of interfacing, an invisible zipper, stay tape, and of course your pattern. You can find it in the description below. When you print out the pattern, check and measure the box on the second page to ensure you chose the correct settings while printing. Once you're happy with it, you can print out the rest of the pattern and tape it together. Each page is numbered and has gray circles on the sides for your orientation. And then you can just cut out each pattern piece. Next, you need to treat the fabric how you will take care of it later. In this case I steamed it, but you can also wash it. Fold the fabric right sides together along the selvage edge and place the pattern pieces along the grain line. Make sure to place the front pieces on fold. And then you can just start cutting your pieces. Now you need to make sure to transfer all notches on all pieces, also the pieces on folds as well as the darts. And when it comes to the darts, I personally find it easiest to put a needle through the bottom of the dart. Like this, I'm able to transfer it to both sides. And then you can just basically connect it with the notches that you made earlier. Just connect it on both sides. And you do this for all of the darts. Continuing with the preparations, you need to apply interfacing on front and back facing on the wrong side of the fabric. You also have a little diagram there which just gives you a bit more detail in general. Next, we need to put the stay tape about 0.5 centimeters away from the cutting line. And you also do this on the wrong side of the fabric. This will help to prevent the neckline from stretching out and just keeping everything in place. Once that's done, you can just overlock all the pieces according to the illustration. That means you basically overlock all cutting lines except for the neckline parts. Alternatively, if you don't have access to an overlock, you can use a zigzag stitch. And it's important to press all pieces after we've overlocked them. Starting with the bodice, you place the side bodice piece and the front bodice piece right sides together and pin it together at 1 centimeter. Do the same for the other side. You do the same thing for the back pieces, pin them together, right sides together. When it comes to the skirt, we start with the darts. Again, put right sides together and pin together. Make sure the lines match on both sides of the darts. And I personally prefer to prepare as many pieces as possible before I go to the sewing machine, just to be more efficient. Next, you need to pin the shoulder seams of the facing together by putting right sides on right sides. And now we're basically just sewing what we prepared before, so in this case I'm closing the princess seam on the back bodice. And here I'm closing the princess seams on the front bodice. And then you need to close the shoulder seam of the facing. And lastly, you can just sew the darts. And now you can just press all the seams apart. Press the darts flat and press the front darts towards the center front and back darts towards center back. To close the side seams of the skirt, put right sides together and pin them together. You do the same for the bodice side seams. You're just gonna do the shoulder seams as well. And then you can just sew it together. We're continuing with the bodice, so just place the side seams and the shoulder seams apart. Now it's time to attach the facing to the bodice. You need to make sure to match the notch of the front bodice and the front facing piece. Place them right sides together and make sure that the shoulder seam of the facing matches the one on the bodice. And now you can cut off about half of the seam allowance, so it's easier to put the facing in the correct place. That's what it should look like. And then you're gonna cut 0.25 centimeters into the seam allowance around the corners, just like that. And now you basically push the remaining seam allowance towards the facing and understitch it at the facing at 0.2 centimeters next to the seam. That's what it should look like. And then you can go back to the ironing station and press it in a way that the facing and the seam is not seen on the right side. It should be really flush. At the front you shouldn't see any of that. It might take some time to press that. Just take your time, make sure you do it accurately. It's really important to not stretch out the neckline, so it just has a nice shape overall. And now you can just press the side seam of the skirt apart. And then you can pin the bodice to the skirt. Make sure that the notch at the front matches, as well as all the princess seams and side seams. It's really easy to just put a needle through and just double check yourself that it is done accurately. And to make sure the facing stays in place, you connect the seam allowances of the shoulder seam. And then you can just sew the waist seam together. I like to use one of these sewing magnets just to make sure that I sew very accurately. Now you can press the waist seam apart as well. When it comes to installing the invisible zipper, I first mark how far I will sew the zipper onto the dress. It's usually about 2 centimeters before the zipper stop. And then you can mark a line 2 centimeters next to the cutting line at the center back. You can then open the zipper and place the zipper tape face down on the right side of the fabric along the marked seam allowance, starting with the wearer's left side of the dress back piece. The zipper start should be about 2 millimeters below the facing, and then you can just pin it in place. You can now change your normal foot to an invisible zipper one or a one-sided one. Change your stitch length to 4 millimeters and just sew the zipper in place. Don't worry about going too close to the coils. It's really just stitching it in place and just double checking the placement of it. We're gonna do the same for both sides of the zipper. You can now just close it, just see if you're happy in general. Double check how it looks at the facing at the top. And once you're happy, you can just basically transfer the waist seam on the other side of the zipper as well as the stop of the zipper, and then place it around and just pin it into place. You can always double check yourself and just close the zipper to see if you've done it correctly. Once that's done, you're going to repeat the same thing. Use the 4mm stitch and stitch it into place, this time starting from the bottom to the top. You can double check yourself that it looks good at the top, at the waist seam, and at the bottom. Once you're happy with it, now you can reduce your stitch to 2.5mm, your regular one, and stitch as close to the course as possible. Try to roll out the zipper just to get as close as possible to it. You're gonna repeat the same on both sides. Place the remaining part of the zipper at the top in a 90-degree angle and place the facing down at the center back seam on the bodice, right side on right side, and stitch right next to the coils of the zipper. Turn the facing inside out and double check that it looks neat and tidy. You're going to do the same on both sides and make sure it's even on both sides. To finish the back pieces, we need to close the center back seam. You do this by putting right side on right side of the center back pieces. You can move the zipper tail out and stitch the center back seam together, starting as close to the zipper seam as possible. You can now change your invisible foot to a normal one again. And now it's time to press the center back seam apart. Now you can fold and press the serged hem edge 2 cm towards the wrong side. To finish off the zipper, we need to connect the ends of the zipper to the seam allowance at the back center seam. When it comes to the sleeves, you now need to stitch them at 0.5 and 0.75 centimeters along the armhole seam. You need to do this with a 4mm stitch. It is crucial to not backstitch at front and back and to leave threads at 10 to 15 centimeters on each side. Once this is done, you can pin the side seams together, right side on right side, and just stitch them together at 1 centimeter. Once that's done, you can press the hem. After this, press the side seam of the sleeves apart and fold it over at 1 centimeter at the hem and press it in place. And then you can just stitch it in place at 0.75 centimeters. And now you can pull the threads until the armhole matches the size of the armhole on the bodice. Make sure you spread it evenly on both sides. Now it's time to insert the sleeves. For this, you need to match the front notch of the sleeve to the front notch of the bodice, and the back notches of the sleeves to the back notches of the bodice, right side on right side. Also make sure that the side seams match. And now you can just start pinning the sleeve in place. Just double check that you're matching all the notches. Also keeping in mind the shoulder notch at the top. And then you can just double check that you're happy with the gathering and make sure it's the same on both sides. And when you start sewing, it's always best to sew at the side seam. And that's basically it. You can now finish press your dress and cut off any remaining threads, and you're done. There you have it, your classy Ava dress. Please make sure to tag me on Instagram using the hashtag Classy Ava Dress. I can't wait to see your creation of the dress. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram. The link is below in the description box, as well as the link to the pattern. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.